was a slave society, but in Rome, you...
Okay, hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull Channel Friday night stream, where we're going to try to do things with 100% fewer technical disasters than the last time we met. Apparently, I discovered that the audio sucked because the USB cable for my lovely microphone the microphone is lovely, and I'm being sarcastic there. It's a very nice microphone. But the cable was shit. The cable was completely frayed. So it was coming out in mono, apparently. And then there was some sort of weird shit going on with my Bluetooth headphones, so I couldn't hear the videos. But everybody else could, which does kind of make it a bit difficult to dunk on them. But, yeah. Yeah, but so far it's looking as it should. Just get started out with a little bit of rapid. And then maybe get stuck into a little bit of Caleb Moffat. Okay. Have a bit of Sicilian action here. Oh, interesting. I believe this is the Agincourt defense. Which, I have to say, I mean, it didn't work very well at Hastings. Interesting things could possibly happen with that. Well, operative word being could. As they say, if it isn't going to happen within 3 moves, it's not going to happen. Okay. That's one square the white knight can't go to. Let's see. X-ray that rook. Not. Right. Let's see. Nah, I reckon I'll keep the bishop there. Get something going on the queen side since that's been largely neglected by Julian Cadi. Not bothered about that. Hello, and how am I sounding today? Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Then it's a brand new microphone USB cable. So, I'm glad to hear that it's working. And how are you this evening? Oh. It's nice when shit actually works. Say that. Very happy with the whole... with things actually working. Because that was just a shitty day that day. So it started out with an ocular migraine. Sort of a low-grade one, nothing too freaky, fortunately, but enough that it was a real pain in the ass. And I hadn't completely gotten over that. And then all of my technology decides to just take a shit at the same time. This is considerably better. And I already did a test on YouTube, and the video audio is also working, so that problem seems to have sorted itself out. Hola, ¿cómo estáis? Yes, it's definitely better than the alternative of them just sort of continuing to exist and do I care all that much about that pawn? Oh. Yeah. Okay. There's not much to this attack. This is like the chess equivalent of rocking up in a dress that says, "Tax the rich." There's just not much to it. Yo también. Yo, a mi juicio, más que nadie. Me estoy alegrando más que nadie que todo esté funcionando, porque esa wea la otra vez, bueno, fue lo peor. Pues. Fue una cagada total. Shitballs. Okay. Well. That's not what I was trying to do. Yeah, a slogan that the Democrats love to pretend to want to do as well. It's like, not even something like, I mean, there's so many things where I would actually say where a reformist slogan would actually be kind of, provocative, if they, it would be talking almost certainly about what could be done with money taken from the rich. But that apparently was completely off limits. I mean, nobody is made uncomfortable by tax the rich, because the rich know it's not serious. Okay, I believe my ass is about to be kicked. I mean, even a reformist slogan like "fuck Nancy Pelosi," for example, that would be more provocative than tax the rich. Okay, I'm gonna move over. Yeah, sí. Sí, lo entiendo, aunque es un poco distinto porque no es un patrón romboide, pero sí. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, when you say when there's a point to say yeah, it's performative. I mean, anything that is like in the realm of propaganda is performative. But there's performances and there's performances. I mean, and that was like Milli Vanilli at the Grammys. I've just dated myself entirely. Okay. I think we're going to talk about social democracy and the whore of Babylon. Because I really want to see this bullshit.
First place in the world, you had the proletariat as a class, right? Rome was the first place in the world you had the proletariat.
Okay, and already we have Caleb Maupin dressed like he's giving us a bollocking at HR.
As a class, right? Rome was a slave society, but in Rome, you had a group of people who were neither slaves, no one owned them, but they were not masters either, right? They were people who sold their labor power. They were pipe fitters and bricklayers and blacksmiths and craftsmen.
And they didn't like slime.
They were proletarians. And many of them were Greek.
Well, yeah, no shit. I mean, none of this stuff is quite like that. Yes, the Roman proletariat is not the same thing as the capitalist proletariat.
The proletariat, this was the first time we'd had such a class. And as a result of having the proletarian class, you had homelessness. Slaves were never homeless. They had somewhere to live. They were property of somebody else, right? But you had homeless children all throughout Rome. Homeless children all throughout the streets. You know, people.
I guess this guy, he likes to like crap on about. We saw like a couple of weeks ago. He hates movement managers, but the whole way he talks, it's like you're in some sort of fucking remedial training on the proper customer greeting policy.
People from afar, they would say, wow, Rome is the richest city, it's this world empire, but we get there and the streets are full of these children that are starving. How does this make any sense? Right? There were homeless children, there was unemployment. And the proletariat of ancient Rome, they would often get ripped off. And
there's that too.
Get exploited. So the proletariat of ancient Rome, they started having to fight for their rights. They started going on strike. They started pushing back against the employers. And they started building.
What gets me about this as well is that he is not making a single specific reference in all of this. I mean, to the extent that we know anything, that we can say with any certainty that any of this stuff happened, we would have names because it would have been written down by one of the many Roman historians, and they were always pretty good about putting down the names of the people involved and the places and everything like that, and he's given us nothing here. I mean, I'm waiting for him to say that, yeah, well, yes. Well, that's what you generally pull out of your ass, I suppose.
Orphanages for the hungry kids. And they started having food programs to take care of each other. Christianity was the religion of the proletariat. Jesus Christ was a carpenter. He was a proletarian. And he was not.
Well, I mean, technically, he would have been petit bourge, really.
Neither a slave nor a landowner. He did not own anyone else, and he himself was not owned. And the Jews of Rome and eventually the Greeks
Oh, this is gonna be good. We know this is gonna be good.
of Rome and many proletarians throughout Rome began to worship this Palestinian teacher and revolutionary called Jesus of Nazareth.
Now, note, of course, yes, plebeian. That's yeah, exactly that. He like avoids saying Jewish, interestingly, or even Judean. I mean, Palestine was the Romans' name for the place. He would have said he was a Nazarene from Nitzarot. Although, I mean, that also presupposes that he existed. He might have just also said, I don't fucking exist and shut the fuck up, Caleb.
Who was a proletarian and who said that you must create, that the creation of wealth through labor was, I don't...
Wait a second. Okay, where's the quote on this? Because I feel fairly certain that if there were some if he ever actually, he seems to be trying to attribute to Jesus the proto-labor theory of value here. And I have a feeling I would have heard this someplace else if there were any quote.
I don't have my Bible in front of me, but I can read you many things that he said that were communistic, right? And that, one had an obligation to love thy neighbor.
I can read you things that he said that were fucking cannibalistic and borderline kinky.
As themselves. And one had an obligation to feed hungry children. And Jesus Christ and the Christian movement, Christianity in Rome, was the movement of the proletariat. That's what Christianity was. Christianity was the movement of the proletariat. There was
again, see, notice at this point we're not even qualifying the concept of proletariat here. I mean, he's just taken it, and now it's just supposed to be. We're supposed to just take it as being exactly what the proletariat was when Marx happened upon it.
There was no science back then. Okay, there was no, there was very little political ideology.
Wait a second. Did he just say there was no science back then?
There was no, movement of the proletariat. That's what Christianity was. Christianity was the movement of the proletariat. There was no science back then.
What the fuck? I mean, all the fucking pretty much all of the math that we get tortured with in primary and secondary school. The Romans had some involvement in that. Certainly they were aware of it. I mean, fucking Hypatia? Hypatia? What? Okay, there was no science back then? What the hell?
Okay? There was no, there was very little political ideology.
Well, yes, I know. I mean, except for, all the fucking political philosophy that was going on at the time. So apart from all of the political philosophy of the Roman Empire and all the Greek stuff that they also were pretty well across, there was no political ideology going on. Well, yes, they didn't have modern science, but I mean, first of all, but they had some kind of science. They had the concept of science. And also, what does this have to do with fucking anything?
The proletarian movement, the first proletarian movement among the world's first proletarians, originated in the city of Rome as Christianity. Christianity was the movement, it was the religion, and the organizing tool of the proletariat. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
However, Christianity began to divide, okay? Because, on the one hand, many of the Roman proletarians wanted the proletarians to rise up and overthrow the landowners and have a society where the last shall be first and the first shall be last.
It's interesting, when he talks about Marx, he's got the shit right in front of him and he's reading, quoting at length, doesn't understand a lot of what he's reading aloud, but he reads it. But he's talking about all this shit, and he's just kind of decided to wing it. And you notice just how little he actually retains about all this.
Everyone has what they need. It was a revolutionary movement of the proletariat. But there started to be some people in the Roman ruling class who said, hey, you know, the Christians are building these orphanages so we don't have all the kids running around, and they're feeding people so we don't have bread riots. Maybe we can use some elements of Christianity. We can kind of water it down and use it to try and stabilize our empire. Right? And as Rome was in decline, was Rome in decline at the time? Gradually, Christianity...
By the way, let me just do a sound check. Are you hearing me? Hola, Cristian. Are you hearing me okay over the video, and are you hearing the video okay? Rodrigo, ¿cómo está, Juan? Is the audio okay, the mix? I just want to make sure that I'm not either claro, ¿cómo está, Juan? ¿Cuánto tiempo?
Divided into two camps. There was one section that was very much the radical and revolutionary section that held on to the belief in a revolution of the proletariat against the empire.
Okay. Quotes, please.
There was another section that was being utilized by the Romans to stabilize their empire. And that became a divide. And if you read the...
Oh, wait a second. He has got notes, and he didn't write any... So, okay, he has notes, and he's got nothing on this. Good to hear. My audio's okay. Bueno, llegaste en medio de un segmento que está en inglés. Estoy hueveando este facho picaba comunista, que se llama Caleb Maupin, que ahora está explicando que Jesús fue más o menos Marx, que incluso habría elaborado la teoría del valor basado en el trabajo y toda esa weá, pero sin citar nada porque por supuesto no hay nada. Así que okay, I believe this was when Christianity got hijacked by CIA-funded Trotskyists and BreadTube.
Book of Revelations, the revelation to John, the final book of the Bible, there is a rant against the whore of Babylon. You know.
Okay, and this is like one of the most popular segments of the Bible for anti-Semites as well.
Pages and pages about the whore of Babylon, the great whore. Well, it's pretty clear if you read it. This is the Christian church in Rome ranting against the sellouts, against the people that are collaborating with the Roman Empire, against the other Christians, right? And it's a rant against those, those who are in the name of the Christian religion becoming tools of the empire, right? And that's in the book of Revelations. There's clearly a divide in the early church.
Well, yeah, a bit of one.
Right? And eventually, with the conversion of Constantine, Rome, as it's falling apart, eventually adopts Christianity as its official religion.
Okay, well, there's a verifiable fact in there. That's, I think, the first one.
Well, that was a little bit of a divide. So, does this parallel Marxism? Of course, right? Marxism is the modern scientific, not religious, scientific movement for the liberation of the proletariat. And as Marxism proliferated, a trend among Marxists developed who don't want to overthrow imperialism, don't
what we're talking about, Nazbols?
want to overthrow capitalism, but want to use elements of socialism, like free healthcare and free education, to make their empire more stable.
You mean sort of like people who want, a government of action to fight for working families.
Social democracy is the whore of Babylon.
And yet all of your fucking proposals are social democracy, except when they're just Nazi shit.
Social democracy is the whore of Babylon. And just as the early Christian church divided between those who were fighting for the proletariat and maintaining Christ's teachings, and those who were using Christian imagery as a way to try and stabilize the...
I mean, given that he's allied himself with social democracy in all but words, his proposals are just weak-ass social democracy, if that. I mean, it becomes very clear that Babylon needs a better quality of sex workers.
The Roman Empire, Marxism, and social democracy have also developed. And that is the division, right? And if you read The Foundations of Christianity by Karl Kautsky, this is made overwhelmingly clear, right? And so there you go. Okay.
And this cancel culture where it's like, because you
Okay.
said this, even though it might be true, this makes...
Gonna sort of mix
Rome
it
was
up
the
a
first
bit.
place in the
Oh,
world
no,
had
shut
the
the fuck up.
proletariat as
Dude,
a
we
class,
already had you.
right? Rome was a slave society, but in
We
Rome,
already had
you
this,
had
shut
a
up.
group of people who were
I
neither
got that one. Yeah, well, I mean, Marx would be challenging him to a duel, apparently. Yeah. Okay. Gonna do a little bit, gonna switch back to the games, and what does everyone say, chess or GeoGuessr? Okay, that's what I was leaning towards as well, and that's the wrong fucking window for that, tab for that. Okay. Waynia. Oh, from Australia. New Zealand is quite conspicuously absent from this latest fucking attempt to revive ANZUS. Okay. No, I'm talking to I hadn't actually heard that bit, but I was just talking about the fact that this anti-Chinese alliance that they've set up is the U.S. and then Australia, and they've just sort of skipped over New Zealand, which sounds like New Zealand just told them to piss off. Which, I mean, that is probably a very low point in an empire when they get snubbed by New Zealand. Okay. So I already buggered up this opening a bit. That was supposed to be E4, and I pushed D4, so I'm just having to rethink my entire setup at the moment, but nothing too bad has happened yet. got that black D pawn is fixed on D5. It's actually where I'd kind of like to get my knight. So I'll have to work on that a little. I haven't seen a lot of news today because I spent the entire day translating Russian patents about... I heard they had quite a budget for it as well. Wait, RAN... Okay, I had heard a different abbreviation. It was like, started with AN or something like that. Oh, the Royal Australian Navy. Oh, of course. Oh, es tu cumple. Feliz cumple entonces. ¿Cuántos años cumplí? ¿Y cuántos años cumplí? So, happy birthday to Norm Norm. Christian Guerra, who was in here a second ago, is just to introduce him. I don't know if he's still around, but he is one of the people behind a great community radio station up in Chile called Radio Aucan. Aucan is Mapudungun, the Mapuche language for rebellion. And I've done collabs with them every once in a while over the years. Hung out with them the last time I was down in Chile. Their community radio scene is really brilliant. And actually, it was Rodrigo and Radio Aucan crew who actually fought a major legal battle to stop the enforcement of the laws that made it basically impossible for anyone who wasn't major oligopoly to broadcast on radio frequency a few years ago. They'd had their equipment confiscated by the cops, and they took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and they won. So now the community radio stations there, which are one of the most important sources of counter-information and have been since the days of the dictatorship, really, can operate more or less legally. And it's really just amazing stuff. These stations are totally they're really based in the community. It's not just, they don't just have community in the name. Like, they will have fundraisers in the community. They'll like bring they'll just set up a huge grill out, and people from all over the place, in this case in San Fernando, which is a town just south of Santiago, will just show up and bring all sorts of food and just hang out and talk about stuff to do on the radio and stuff. It's really amazing. The fuck does the Royal Australian Navy need with nuke boats in the first place? I mean, what are they? I mean, they basically do nothing but hijack refugees at this point. No, that's my rook gone, but there are still things that can happen. God, is this a perpetual? Come on. Oh god, that was not good. That was an ungood move. Can't believe I just did that. I had one like this. The other night, I'd gone like 30 moves dissecting this person's... Yeah, well, let's see if I can force a stalemate. It's been enough interesting... blunders. Okay. Okay. Remove the reaction. Oh, does this offend you? Breadtube lies, McCarthyism, and talk with frank analysis. Speaking of things that are completely fucked up, I'm gonna move over to this one. I'm trying this new order of things because I think I'm gonna manage to get more stuff in to the same amount of time
And
as
this
a
cancel
result.
culture where it's like, because you said this, even though it might be true, this makes you a this, and therefore
Oh wait. Again, we get this wonderful level of specificity that shows that there's absolutely no reason to question anything he's saying
you're
here.
a rotten, despicable, awful person because you're a this. I mean, this is McCarthyism. This is just classic McCarthyism, plain and simple. I mean, there's no other. This is what they did during the McCarthy period, right?
Okay. This is going to be interesting.
During the McCarthy period, you wrote an article advocating for workers' rights. Well, everybody knows that Karl Marx believed in workers' rights.
Yeah, see, gonna just stop you right there. You wrote a book claiming that the global financial crisis was a Jewish conspiracy. That's not exactly the same thing, Caleb. Can you see how that's not the same thing?
The worker and the capitalist is a communist thing. You're a communist. You're a communist.
No, Caleb, don't worry. Nobody would ever accuse you of being a communist. If you if I am ever asked to say whether you are or have ever been, Caleb, believe me, I won't have any difficulty saying, nah, that guy.
And then you go, oh, I'm not a communist. Oh, I hate communism. Oh, well, you better prove it. Give us a list of 10 people in the Communist Party that you can turn. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, I will.
Yeah, this is kind of like when he went to Moscow to talk with the fascists at the Eurasian movement, and he disavowed communism and said actually he was more of a Huey Long, Alexander Dugin kind of guy. And then he changed audiences and changed his views again.
I mean, this is the same stuff they did during McCarthyism, and it's shocking to me that people on the left can't see this. Right? That you can say completely true things, but somehow because you said it,
give me an example.
that means that you're a bad person. You're one of these categories of bad people, right? And the list of bad people gets like longer every day, right?
Completely true things like what, Caleb?
You know what I mean? So
yeah, like where's the line drawn, right?
There's a new category of bad person every day. It's like a a new adjective they throw.
I've heard of like vague booking, but this is vague casting,
right? If you disagree, if you question what the U.S. government says about China, you're then a genocide denier, right? If you question, if you don't agree with U.S. foreign policy in Syria, you're an Assadist. And they invent a new label to put on people. And the memo goes out to all these liberals that, if you're one of these people, you're bad. These type of people, they're bad. They're bad. And so it's like, and then everyone has to then rush to prove they're not one of these things. How about we talk about facts? Not what labels we can put on people, but what's true and what's not. How about we talk about that? That's what journalism is supposed to be about, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a very good example of lying with the truth because, I mean, it's like when my favorite one is when he claims that there's like some sort of like pandemic of just people randomly accusing the entire world of being Nazbols, when literally the only people that I have heard that descriptor apply to are him and the guy who founded the Nazbol party.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm seeing a trend here about how the people who repeat this stuff are have ties to or are paid by corporations, billionaires, or the intelligence community.
Now, speaking of people being paid by capitalists and capitalist governments, yeah, Franco, I don't know you, but maybe you should ask the guy you're talking to there what his source of income is. Because I heard that he gets money from some fucking capitalists.
Just like I had no idea that BreadTube had people that fund them.
Okay, I've never heard of this guy. He had no idea. Okay, that is so he read that bullshit book. Okay, so this is so fucking deep because okay, he's trying to talk about like how apparently like reactionaries are the victims of guilt by association, and meanwhile he wrote an entire book that is like, okay, we're going to construct a mythical version of BreadTube, put people in there that nobody in BreadTube would have ever thought would be part of it, specifically just so that you could get certain ideas into it, and just write an entire book making shit up and sort of and then just bootstrap, well, if this is true then this must be true, and they except without actually showing that any of it's true, in order to claim that anyone to the left of him on YouTube is in the CIA.
That have ties to intelligence. It's not surprising to me.
I mean, the individual who has been acting as kind of an advisor, again, not going to say
advisor. Okay.
Look, he's somebody who's been tied to deprogramming in the past. You can read all that deprogramming. Google deprogramming. It comes from this whole scare about CIA brainwashing and communist brainwashing and the Manchurian Candidate. In the 1960s and 70s, there was an obsession with brainwashing and deprogramming.
What exactly? Okay, so we're just gonna avoid talking about the people that somebody might currently be talking about deprogramming.
And the individual who is tied to BreadTube and who has been advising them on very good information from a very reliable source,
which he does not cite in the book, and nobody's fucking heard of this guy.
I have that information. That individual, was the top deprogrammer in the 70s, is still running a deprogramming operation. And basically, it shows that we have a situation where there's a fight in the ruling class, and BreadTube is a deprogramming operation. Basically,
yeah. I mean, he just lets shit come out of his mouth without any regard to whether it makes any sense, and frank analysis is like just sort of nodding along. It's like, I mean, see, personally, if I had the author of a book who claimed that Thought Slime was nothing, it was a channel that was dedicated entirely to scat and self-harm, I might have a few critical questions for the guy, rather than just sort of nodding along, but I don't know who the hell this guy is.
Basically, they feel that many people have been quote unquote brainwashed by the alt-right, by pro-Trump voices or libertarianism or Stefan Molyneux or whatever. So BreadTube is a deprogramming operation. It's an attempt to unbrainwash people by the alt-right, and it's coming from pretty high levels of the deep state and pretty big corporations that
Oh, right. Hey, I mean, he's just making this shit up completely.
And I take apart the various individuals. They're all very, very shady. It's interesting. I've been doing left-wing activism for years. And I talk about my record in the very back of the book.
Yes, because he talks about his record every chance he gets. He was important in Occupy, Him and Micah White, just really important in Occupy. And that's how you can trust him, because if the only protest you somehow are aware of is Occupy, well, he was important in that. He gave a speech.
I have a note on the political development of the author. I have a record of being a leftist.
The author needs political development.
I was at Occupy Wall Street. Before that, I was doing police brutality work in Cleveland. But these people came out of nowhere. It's like just out of the blue, they just arose, right?
Oh, wait, okay, so the idea is that he's aware of his own past, but he's not aware of their past, and so he assumes that they came out of nowhere?
And some of them have got connections to Hollywood, and some of them are failed comedians. Like, I mean, this one person is a failed comedian who was doing movie reviews, and then suddenly he's now the internet, the YouTube algorithms expert on communism and anarchism.
Oh, that's supposed to be Thought Slime, and notice that this expert on BreadTube here gets it completely backwards, because the Thought Slime's movie review channel on horror movies is something that came after Thought Slime's political channel.
Oh, I mean, it's just out of the blue. These people that no one have ever met before. I've been going to protests for years. I've never seen these people.
Wow, yeah, you mean you've been going to protests for years and somehow you managed not to coincide in the same group of people as people from a different part of the world than you? Wow, I mean, see, I've been going to protests for years too, and I've never seen a Caleb moppin'. Ever. Not once. At a single protest I've been to protests all over the world. Never seen a Caleb moppin'. That means there are no Caleb moppins. This is some weird, like, sort of a rejection of object permanence we have here.
No record of them being in any activist group or leftist group or doing any real life activism ever. But out of the blue, suddenly they're online, and that's who you need to listen to if you believe in socialism and communism. And they just so happen to repeat State Department talking points and smear and try to destroy the reputation of all kinds of people who don't, right? If you don't, suddenly all the real leftists who've been protesting all these wars and exposing these lies, suddenly we're all secret Nazis, don't you?
No. You are, Caleb. You are.
It's really hilarious. I just wanted to say this.
And not very
there have
secret.
been criticisms of this book. It's just been out.
Wow, you really?
Right? And they've been criticizing this book. I have not heard one true criticism of this book yet.
I've not heard one true statement in the book yet.
I'm waiting. I mean, I'm sure there's some argument that I made. Someone could disagree. I have not heard.
Well, okay, how about the time you completely lied about Thought Slime's content in the most easily verifiable way, since all you have to do is go to fucking YouTube and watch, and how you claim Destiny is part of BreadTube, except that Destiny openly hates BreadTube? Yeah, I mean, how has he managed to avoid all of the various criticisms of this extremely poorly written, poorly edited book that is just basically shit he pulled out of his ass on a Coke jag or something?
Heard one true criticism. One of these hacks, who I didn't even mention in the book because he's not legit and he's not relevant enough as this bad empanada or whatever. He said on his screen, not a single citation in this book. Well, I will direct you toward the first page of the book. The very first page.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
As a citation, I cite Cornelius Cardew, his song Lords of Labor, and...
That's not the same. Jesus Christ, do you not know what a citation is, Caleb? That's a quote.
I'll then take you to the bibliography. The bibliography that begins on page 191 and goes on for multiple pages. I cite Karl Marx in this book. I cite Lenin in this book.
Well, yeah, okay, which is very useful because, of course, Karl Marx and Lenin wrote extensively on the ties of BreadTube to the CIA.
I cite CIA documents in this book.
Yeah, not a single one of them actually has anything to do with your entire thesis. Yeah, I know, which is secret. Yeah, I mean, the last time he did anything that you could call left-wing activism, he got kicked out for being too fashy. That's his own version of his own origin story, too. I mean, he was in Cleveland fisting, and...
there are so many citations, and he says to his viewers, there's not a single citation in his book.
Well, yes, because as you've just kind of acknowledged, there's not a single citation that actually supports your fucking arguments. I mean, okay, you quoted Marx, you quoted Lenin. That's wonderful. You do that quite a bit. I mean, without understanding them. But the thing is, see, if you're going to smear a whole bunch of people as supposedly being like CIA drones or something like that, maybe, yeah, you should cite some actual evidence of it. See, that was the point
And it's
that
like,
he was
I
That's
making.
mean,
so disingenuous.
yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, he can say that. I can't stop him from saying that. And
Well, yeah, it is so disingenuous. What he's doing is so disingenuous. Look, there are tons of citations. Rush Limbaugh did this too once. Somebody said, uh, I mean, he at one point, this is like back in the 90s, one of his first books was coming out, and he was like, yeah, I defy anyone to find a lie. This book is full of footnotes. It is full of footnotes. First of all, it wasn't. It was full of endnotes. And when you check the footnotes, when you check the endnotes, it was all bullshit. It didn't back up any of his stuff.
he's got more YouTube subscribers than I've got, but it's like some things are true and some things are not. My book has plenty of citations in it, my friend.
Well, yes, okay, then maybe find a citation in your book to something relevant.
You know, and anyone who buys that will see that. You know, it's not an academic book by any means. It's not.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think we can agree that it is not an academic book.
You know, this isn't like a college thesis where I'm citing every paragraph, but the works that are quoted are cited. They're
Yeah, but again, not really this
is a bibliography. There is, you know, I mean, this is ridiculous to claim there's no citations in the book. That's ridiculous. Another thing that was said against the book, and I thought this was amazing, was that I'm describing in the opening chapter, I'm describing different you know, bread tube personalities, and I mentioned H bomber guy or Brewis, right? Harris, I think it's Harris Michael Brewis. I mentioned him, and it's 2 paragraphs. I'm just describing him. It's not an argument or anything. And I mention that he was joined on a stream that he did to raise money for Mermaids, which is a pro-transgender charity in Britain.
God. He can't even talk about anything to do with trans people without immediately adopting transphobic framing. It is a charity that that helps out trans and gender non-conforming kids, hooks them and their parents up with resources to help them out.
And I said he was joined by U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Chelsea Manning, as well as a number of Hollywood actors such as Colin Mockery and Mara Wilson. So, based on that, you know, this bad empanada character is now telling his audience that I don't support Chelsea Manning, and I think Chelsea Manning is pro-imperialist. How does he get that from that?
Well, he probably got that from something else that you said, Caleb.
This is like, I mean, it's like, and again, like if these people were making honest arguments, I would take this seriously, but they just lie. Except,
yeah, God. Oh, God damn it. No.
excessively. I mean, you know, I mean, they're trying to find the secret like Nazi code sign in my hand gestures.
I have literally never heard anyone analyze his hand gestures because you don't need to. I mean, there was like a fucking this like 5-way collab just recently reading his anti-Semitic book. You don't need to read tea leaves to find fascist shit in the oeuvre of Caleb Maupin.
I mean, these people are excessive liars, right? I mean, you know, Vosh has said on his stream over and over again that I am a literal.
Another example of somebody he lumps into BreadTube a little bit more validly than Destiny, certainly, but who basically nobody who's actually in, like, who would normally be considered in BreadTube really likes.
Literal Nazi. Like, not that I have fascistic tendencies, that I'm a literal Nazi, okay?
Well, I mean, you profess admiration for a guy whose entire idea is that if you take Stalinism and Nazism and make it a little bit more right-wing than that already is, that you have something worth doing. Yeah, I mean, it's not actually all that hard.
Okay.
I mean, granted, I mean, Vosh is one to talk. I mean, his fucking stream is just, he just platforms one neo-Nazi after another and just lets them say their piece, and he just sort of treats it like a reasonable argument. I mean, he can piss off. But
My wife is not white, okay? I spent years going to court with police brutality victims in Cleveland. I mean, I was protesting against police brutality long before Black Lives Matter had ever been tweeted out as a hashtag.
yes, and let's in this context, it's worth noting that elsewhere he has said that Black Lives Matter is actually a conspiracy, and that the real Black liberation movement, he actually said this is the Nation of Islam.
Right? And these
He said that when he was in the room with the fascists, with Dugin and the various Front National
people say that I'm a literal Nazi. How in the world can I be a literal Nazi, right? I mean, I can be many things, but you think you're
He's not really. See, I'd have absolutely no trouble explaining why that would be bullshit, but he's having a lot of difficulty here.
gonna see me sig heiling, with the white nationalists? I mean, this is
Oh well, yeah, except for that time with Dugin and company.
ridiculous. This is just absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that these people, it's like there's the whole expression. If you look at Mein Kampf by Hitler, the
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Well, you see, he's proving he's not a Nazi by quoting Mein Kampf.
literal Nazi. He talks about how when you lie, you shouldn't lie little. You should lie big.
Yeah, and he's very clearly taken this shit to heart.
You tell the big lie because people find it really hard not to believe a big lie.
Yes, I mean, like your interlocutor here, who apparently doesn't think anything of the fact that what you say about bread tube literally makes no fucking sense.
Well, I mean, these people are experts at the big lie, right? I mean, they would
Well, okay, Caleb, that's wonderful. Now, what you need to do here is provide a concrete, verifiable example of them doing
have
this.
you believe that the International Action Center, Ramsey Clark, the former U.S. Attorney General, the Answer Coalition, all the people who've been leading great anti-war protests.
Okay, great. Okay, first of all, leading is already a bit much. I mean, what they do is they spread their branded placards all over any protests, and they monopolize the permits so that they can then negotiate everything with the cops. They're not leading shit. And great anti-war protests, see, I would say that the standard for a good anti-war protest is that the war doesn't happen after that. I would say that the Answer Coalition's anti-war protests and the Stop the War Coalition's anti-war protests decidedly subpar because the wars actually happened
over the years, and have broken the sanctions and offered the hand of friendship to the people of the world as an anti-war movement. That they're all Nazis.
Wait a second. Okay, see, here's a great example of the big lie right here, because nobody has said this. Nobody has said that Answer and the Workers' World Party are all Nazis. In fact, the Workers' World Party kind of kicked you out because you were so fashy.
Because they don't support U.S. foreign policy. They would have you believe that the tankies of the Communist Party USA, who built the Civil Rights Congress of the United States, William L. Patterson, Paul Robeson, I mean, the people that were sticking up for the
people who are very active and alive and kicking right now.
Scottsboro 9, Angelo Herndon, a Communist Party organizer who was sentenced to death for handing out leaflets.
God, I mean, what the hell? I mean, I've heard of stolen valor, but is he actually trying to say that calling him a fascist means he can't be a fascist because they're the Communist Party USA, back before they became just a Democrat Stan organization, actually did some worthwhile shit before he and I were both born?
pamphlets during the 1930s, and eventually the Supreme Court freed him. That these people, because they liked Stalin, which they did, they praised Stalin a lot. Somehow they're the same as white supremacists.
Who the fuck is saying that?
If that is not an evil and downright wrong message, I don't know what is, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so, he literally has not quoted anyone saying any of these things because there isn't this. He's completely changed the subject. It's great. He's like actually sort of instead. Okay, yeah, I mean, that was great the way he did that. Because it's like, yeah, I can't be a Nazi because let me tell you about some of the brilliant shit that the Communist Party USA did back in the 1930s, and it's like, I mean, and then he goes into lecture mode.
Right, but
and then the idea is that you don't even that nobody comes back and says, well, wait a second, that tells me a lot about Paul Robeson and Langston Hughes and
but that is overall one of the main points of BreadTube, that those of us on the left who are actually anti-imperialist are Nazis.
No, that literally is not. And God, does this guy? I'm gonna have to look this guy up because there's like no pushback. Maybe that's coming, or maybe I mean, this is Maupin's repost of the video, so maybe he cut it out and there was some pushback. It did sort of start in the middle, but I mean,
and that is a ridiculous argument. Another thing to point out is that capitalism in our time is not pencil factories. All right,
yeah, that's part of why your entire argument that actually the way we get communism is by increasing productivity, and that's why it's a bad thing to say billionaires shouldn't exist and anti-Marxist. Yeah.
In our time, we live in an age of giant monopolies, big banks and corporations, big corporate cartels and trusts and syndicates, big, huge corporations dominating the world.
Big and huge.
Holding back economic development, trying to keep the world poor so that they can stay rich, right? That's called imperialism. And Vladimir Lenin wrote a whole book about it called Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism.
Okay. But Jesus, Caleb, the question, the issue you were trying to address was why you personally cannot be a Nazi. And now we're talking about how Lenin wrote Imperialism, the Last Stage of Capitalism.
And, not just Lenin, Naomi Klein wrote a very good book called The Shock Doctrine.
Well, yeah, what does this have to do with the point, with you and fascism?
Neoliberalism and how that operates. And Arundhati Roy, a very good academic.
I mean, at this point, what is he's just reading off? What is he just reading off the spines of his books or something?
Has written about this. Noam Chomsky has talked about this. The system of capitalism in our time is a global monopoly system, right? It is a global economic order where big banks and, dare I say, international bankers and
yeah. I mean, he knows what he's doing there as well.
Corporations dominate the world and hold back economic development. That has been Marxist analysis since the time of Lenin, since 1916 when Lenin wrote about it. But according to BreadTube, that's anti-Semitic.
No. Talking about imperialism is not anti-Semitic. Claiming that there is a conspiracy of international bankers, and then writing an entire book that actually makes it very clear that you specifically mean Jews. Yeah, that's anti-Semitic.
Why? I don't know. I mean, somehow you talk about.
You don't know? Really? You don't know? Yeah, it's nothing to do with the book you wrote about how it's the Jews.
Big banks and corporations ruling the world. They say, you're talking. What you mean is Jews, and it's.
Well, yes, because you wrote an entire fucking book saying what you mean is Jews. And aside from that, the thing is, actually, you go back to the OG fascists, and they were fine talking about fucking monopoly capitalists and all this stuff. they loved to talk about that. They would use that in order to divert, the more naive sectors of like the petty bourgeoisie and, some bits of the working class occasionally, uh, and say, yeah, actually, we're the ones who are against the big monopolies and big business and all that stuff. They actually that this is nothing he's saying here would be inconsistent with the sort of shit that like the Nazis, Mussolini, and Franco would tend to file under plutocracy. And they talked about it a lot. Of course, at the same time, they were totally in the pocket of big business. But, I mean, literally, this sort of there's nothing he's saying that actually completely is beyond the pale for that.
It's like, no, we don't mean Jews. In fact, among the richest families in the United States, the majority are not Jewish. The Rockefellers are not Jewish, right? The Carnegies are not Jewish. The Mellons are not Jewish. So I'm not talking about Jews when I'm talking about imperialism.
Yeah, except when you're talking about international bankers, as your book makes very, very fucking clear. Like, if you want to say that that book was not something that should have been written, that it was a piece of shit and it shouldn't exist, and it was anti-Semitic, and you want to just sort of acknowledge that you said some seriously anti-Semitic shit and make it clear you no longer believe that stuff, that would be one thing, but you very clearly still do.
I'm talking about imperialism. I'm talking about economics, for goodness sakes. And that's another thing you're not allowed to do. That's class reductionism, according to BreadTube. You can't.
Okay. Class reductionism is not talking about class. Yeah, the Civil Rights Congress. Is that a... Actually, yeah. That did exist. That was an... It succeeded the International Labor Defense, the National Federation for Constitutional Liberties. It was a legal defense organization. And it was affiliated with the CPUSA. Okay, yeah, that's a thing that existed.
Talk about workers wanting higher wages. They can't talk about people going on strike.
They do talk about people going on strike. They even raise money for them to do it, dude. I mean, there's the big lie, and then there's this. I mean, this like fucking Jabba the Hutt of a lie that you're just sitting here spinning. It is really impressive.
No. We have to talk about identity politics. We have to talk about white privilege, and this is.
Yeah, I mean, it suck that we have to acknowledge racism exists as part of fucking capitalism.
BreadTube, and this is not Marxism. BreadTube serves imperialism.
Oh God, I mean, geez, this whole thing that he really did take Mein Kampf to heart. He's just sort of now he's just repeating the title of the book over and over again.
That's why you should read my book.
When they resort to ad hominem scale, you know that means that you won, right? Because they can't argue with the facts, so that's why they're resorting to ad hominems, because you're disrupting their illusion of reality.
God, okay, what's really amazing is that I can still see Franco's head, even though he has crawled so far up Caleb's hole at this point. I mean, he's like doing the original Cleveland fisting now. Like, what the hell? Does this guy... Where did he find this guy? Who is this guy? Hello, Shido. Have we met before? Yes, he plugged
They're comfortable thinking that this is how the world is, like, and they have this illusion, and it makes them feel comfortable. So when you present them with things that makes them uncomfortable, like the truth,
Yes, because that's what he does. He presents people with things that make them uncomfortable, like the truth.
Then it's like their survival is being threatened, and they just lash out with ad hominems. They don't know what else to say. And
Yeah, like there was that time that uh, Caleb Maupin hit BreadTube with two very uncomfortable truths. First of all, the uncomfortable truth that acknowledging overproduction in capitalism makes you a Malthusian. And then the double whammy that there is overproduction in capitalism.
and they lie,
One thing
and it's
I,
unfortunate these lies promote division.
one thing I will say, which is interesting, is that a lot of the content that if you watch, and I had to watch a lot of this as I put the book together, my head was ready to explode watching all this content.
Yeah, well, it's a pity it didn't.
But a lot of the content that you get from Vosh and Thought Slime and all of that, they're not talking about ideas. They're not even talking about politics. It's this weird kind of inside baseball of like, did you see what this person just did?
Yeah, again, not really.
Yeah, well, they're an idiot. Yeah, I mean, it's this weird kind of like high school.
So shit talking. Yeah, it's like, don't talk to them. They're stupid. Or,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they're fighting with each other too. They all hate each other. Not just those of us. I mean,
surprise me.
They all hate each other. They throw mud at each other.
Well, see, that's the thing. You lumped a bunch of people together into your fictional constructed bread tube, who are completely on politically opposite ends of the spectrum. Yes, of course they fucking hate each other. Of course, Destiny, who stands neo-Nazi paramilitaries, doesn't get on with, anarcho-communists.
And really, so much of what they do, so much cursing, and I mean, I'm okay. I'll drop an F-bomb every so often on this channel, on my channel, whatever. But so much cursing, so much talk about feces, so much talk.
Oh God, here he goes again with the fucking this idea that Thought Slime is nothing but scat and self-harm.
About sex, so much talk about dirt and slime, and there's just you get this gross feeling, right?
What the? It's not even fucking true. Oh, hey, you were looking for a chess stream and you're enjoying this stream a lot now? Holy shit, okay, this is like, okay, that is so cool. Because I've always thought, people would be looking for a chess stream and see this, and it would be a very interesting moment where I find out exactly that a lot of them are like, oh, wait, also there's communism on here? And then fuck off. So, I mean, that's cool. Because this is what I do. You missed the chess bit, but I'll be back tomorrow. And there's also chess, and there's also GeoGuessr, and then there's me taking the piss out of Caleb Maupin and PragerU and other prominent asshole people.
I mean, it just and the sad thing is, I mean, look at the suicide rate right now. I mean, so many young people are growing up, and they do feel like they're dirt, and they do feel like they're slime and all of that. And you listen to these people, and they're just hurling negativity, just endless amounts of negativity, personal attacks on other people,
You mean like writing an entire book that claims that a bunch of people are part of an elaborate CIA conspiracy that they're not actually a part of, Caleb? Yes.
downs against other people.
He's
and then they
just so
put
full of
shit.
shit.
There's too many people in the world. We need to degrow.
Oh God, not this stuff again. Okay, see, but none of these people actually say there's too many people in the world. That is a lie that he made up. What happened was, Thought Slime made an allusion to overproduction in capitalism. Overproduction, where capitalists make too much shit. It doesn't even end up benefiting anyone, because a lot of it just gets wasted. It was just a throwaway allusion to it. And because of this, then Caleb Maupin turns around and accuses Thought Slime of being a Malthusian. for acknowledging, as Marx and Engels also did, that overproduction is a feature of capitalism. And then, a few weeks later, or maybe a few months, I forget, Caleb Maupin turns around and does a video destroying BreadTube by pointing out that there is overproduction in capitalism, which he then pretends that they deny. I mean, that's what he's talking when he claims that anyone's saying that there are too many people. It's just such bullshit.
To roll back the human population, you know, we're all
like
going to die.
Literally, none of this is true.
Ecological catastrophe. The government's run by.
Oh wait, well, ecological catastrophe. Yes, I mean it's interesting because he never really outright denies climate change. But it's pretty. He doesn't actually treat it as a serious thing.
A bunch of secret Nazis. Did your parents vote for Trump?
Secret Nazis? No, he's not talking about. Nobody's talking about secret Nazis. They're right out there. They're right out there in the open these days. And Caleb is right there out there in the open about it too. He does not try to hide his associations with fascist groups.
That means they're probably part of this secret Nazi conspiracy.
Nobody's talking about a secret Nazi conspiracy. This is some bullshit that he made up in his book. Because there's nothing, nobody claims it's secret.
You know, and it's just this endless amount of negativity that comes out of these people. And I mean, it's like, you know, are they doing good by putting this? I mean, it's like.
Are you doing good by just making shit up and then going just out of whole cloth and then just going stream of consciousness? Well, this guy just sort of gormlessly nods at you.
You know, on my streams, I do criticize capitalism. I criticize imperialism, but I am all about making people proud of who they are.
Yes, in a very, very specific way that he thinks that other people might call fascist. Which is why he's very careful not to actually get too specific about what he means.
All about inspiring people. I'm telling you.
Well, I mean, except trans people. He doesn't really want trans people to be proud of who they are. In fact, he kind of doesn't like trans people existing.
People to go out and fight for justice. That's why I became a socialist. I wanted to be part of creating a whole new world where we didn't have the chaos of the market and greed. We actually had a rational economy. Socialism for me has always been about optimism. It's always been constructive, and I'm really proud of the fact that I started to put on a suit, because when I...
Yes, because... God. Because he has absolutely... He's so little contact with, like, actual working class people, because it's not his background. No, the idea of overproduction is just... I mean, that is just... that's not really an idea, it's just a fact. I mean, if you look at the amount of stuff that's being produced versus the amount that is actually needed, there's way more. Like, there's enough food right now. This guy is part of it. I mean, this guy is actually, very deep into the far right. Now, the thing with, like, to give you an example with overproduction, we are producing every year enough food to feed 10 billion people. We only have about 7 billion people on the planet. But then, what's impressive about this is before it ever gets to retail, a lot of it just gets binned. Before anyone actually gets to even, roughly half of it gets just thrown away before it ever reaches the retail level where anyone might actually have some chance of eating it. I mean... And in the auto industry also produces way more than they expect anyone to actually buy. Or, I mean, you take Apple, who have turned planned obsolescence into an art form. And they make it harder with every generation of equipment to actually repair things so that people have to throw them out and buy something new, rather than just replacing one or two parts that went bad. I mean, overproduction is very much a real thing. And it's nothing to do with Malthusianism. Because the overproduction has nothing to do... It's not something... This overproduction is not stuff that any of us actually gets any benefit out of. We're not actually... In fact, if anything, it actually ends up screwing us over. Because it makes things more expensive than they need to be. and often worse quality. Where am I from? Oh, now I'm curious. Where do you think I'm from? I'll tell you, but I'm just curious.
Went to Ecuador in 2013 to the World Festival of Youth and Students, a global communist gathering. I met communists from Vietnam.
Oh,
I met
thank you.
communists from Angola. I met communists from India. I met communists from many different countries, Bolivia,
And they met a fascist.
Venezuela, and they were all wearing suits, and they were serious politicians who
Yeah, they politicians, not communists.
they led organizations of millions of working class people that were fighting for their rights and organizing in their communities.
And not doing very much of anything, actually, a lot of the time, because a lot of these communist parties basically have just moved over to doing nothing but parliamentary work and not much of that. Well, that speaks highly of the communists, really. I wouldn't want to have a dialogue with that government either.
And honestly, in the book, towards the end, when I'm talking about my own development, I'll say that probably the closest thing to what a communist party is supposed to be that I've ever seen in the United States, the closest thing I've ever seen was a black nationalist organization in Cleveland called Black on Black Crime Incorporated.
Shh.
And they were a black nationalist group on the east side of Cleveland.
It's interesting how, like, every time when he wants to talk about what communists ought to be like, he ends up mentioning right-wing shit. I mean, it's like...
Were led by Art McCoy, the owner of Superfly Barbershop, and whenever anything was going on in the community, they would have, every Wednesday they had a meeting, and there'd be 80, 90 people there, and they would talk about hospital closings, they would talk about the rent, they would talk about the speed light cameras, they would talk about police brutality. When gangs were fighting each other, they would go out and negotiate a truce to bring peace
Midwest.
to the community. That's what a communist
Call me
party
Elise,
is.
or
It's
the
center
untitled
of the
anarchist
community.
seagull. But मेरा नाम Elise है.
Organized. That's what the Black Panthers were. That's what the Communist Party USA used to be in the 1930s. And if you go to Venezuela, that's what the United Socialist Party is.
Interesting that he doesn't mention there is a communist party in Venezuela.
And if you go to Iran, that's what the Basij councils are.
Yeah, there's also a communist party in Iran, although they largely have to operate in exile.
You go to China, that's what the Communist Party is. You go to Greece and the parts of Greece that are run by the Communist Party. You go to
that would be the Communist Party that has actually organized alongside fascists and taken the most reactionary line possible on gay rights, namely opposing it because being gay is unnatural. What part of India are you from?
India and Kerala, where the Communist Party is the majority party. They're in the community.
Kerala.
They're meeting people's needs. They're assembling people. They're involving people in the political process. That's what a communist is supposed to do.
What communists are not supposed to do is write books full of lies and then hang out with Nazis and just basically get a live action blowjob and call it an interview.
A communist is an upstanding citizen who loves their country.
No, like literally, upstanding citizen, no, and loves their country? Okay, here's the thing. You're kind of confusing here, Caleb, communists with liberals.
And loves their community so much that they want to get rid of the greed of big corporations. And
God, this is, I mean... We just watched another video a little while ago where he was calling social democrats the whore of Babylon, which, I mean, I'm not going to get into the biblical shit, but, I mean, and yet the closest that whenever he talks about what he actually wants to do, it's just this piss-weak social democratic bakwas. Of course I know it. I happen to be a fan of some food that was invented there.
Put the people first and bring people into politics, expand
आपको कौन
democracy.
कहानी
That's
आता
what a
है?
communist really is. And it's not somebody sitting on the internet talking about the end of the world while they cuss up a storm.
Okay, that's... Okay.
And this cancel culture where it's like, because you said
and
this.
Get rid of that, and it is 1 a.m., and that is when I have to wrap up. But I will be here tomorrow, same time, between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So, I hope to see you there, and have a good night. Namaskar. And maybe if you get there earlier, you'll also see some of the chess that also happens on this stream. Maybe I'll even win one. Okay. Good night to everyone. See you tomorrow, and welcome to the... And it's always nice to see somebody new here. Now, wrapping up for tonight.